Greetings and welcome from Huntington Beach, California, here at Lifeguard Tower 18. I'm here on the sands, although sufficiently back from the seafront there to avoid the disaster of last week's when that rogue wave came swooping up and interrupted my live book reading about two-thirds of the way through. It was a long chapter. But actually that worked out pretty good. I like the clip that came out of it. I'm going to be reusing that clip over and over as kind of a theme for this particular channel, especially as I go forward. But today I'm here to read from another chapter of Going Alone. This is going to be the chapter called My God is a Little God, which is my reference to the seemingly, well, what do you describe? How do you describe it? It's an idea that recurs in my mind about the sense of deity, God, that arises to solve all the problems, to plug all the holes, to fill the gaps where questions live, to make the easy answers, right? To wipe away and set aside the uncertainty. And I say to that wishful thinking, no, I'm going to have to do the hard work. I'm going to try to do the heavy lifting of figuring those things out. And that's the effort that I try to make in doing so. You know what? Maybe I'll go over there to the pier. To the tower. Well, is that too much effort? Oh, I think I'll just, although that would be kind of cool. Let's see if we can do that. Let's move. Let's just move this. We'll leave this bag here, that bag there. We'll take this bag over here and we'll walk over here and I'll set the camera up on here and then you can have a better view of the beautiful waves back there while I'm doing this book reading. Oh boy. Oh, goodness gracious. This is Lifeguard Tower 18. Let me just turn the camera around. I'm getting more adept at this live stuff now that I'm doing it every afternoon. This has been my this tower is becoming as important to me in the story of Going Alone as, or maybe the story beyond Going Alone, as the places out at Siberia Ghost Town were. So I'll put this up here, right here. I see somebody's shoes there. Turn this around and you guys can have a nice view of the sea. I should have good receptivity here as well. And I'll go out there and do my reading with the new audio. I hope the new audio is working good. Okay, we're going to be reading from My God is a Little God. It's a short chapter, so I won't be at this too long. And then I'll go in for a swim after that. All this sand. Here's where I must have been right around here when the wave hit me last week because it's all wet. There it is. My God is a Little God. It's a short chapter and it's got an image there, an image by my daughter Emily of the Home of Faith, which is a little cave I found out in the desert that I have imagined as the home of my feign little God. Let's go read. Ooh. My God is a little God, expecting nothing more. And a quote, "We have not yet encountered any man who is more merciful as a man who flicks a beetle over on its feet." That's by Annie Dillard. I think that's maybe the only woman that's quoted in the book. I have come to realize that the muse I so often speak of, and which is the source and inspiration for so many of my thoughts, must be the same muse which heralds and inspires the words, music, thoughts, and motivation of the religious. A distinction, though, is that I apply and attribute no animating will to this contrived agency beyond the scope, breadth, force, and power of my own weak and faltering intellect and imagination. It is no wonder, then, that I neither trust my God's wisdom, guidance, or even its mere existence. My God is a little God, which can neither speak, write, argue, or even think without my own willful cooperation. After that, that's the little prose introduction. After that comes the muse, I call it notes from the muse. These are the little bits of ideas and inspiration that just kind of come as a flash. I call them muse strikes. They just appear. You've got to get them down. You got about a minute or two to get them down before the words are lost, sometimes less than that. So you can find those in the books in the sections titled Notes from My Muse, and they're always identified in italics and left justification. Here we go. I told my little god of the desert today. He'd never heard of such a place. I admired his honesty in fessing up his ignorance. This may be one of his stronger traits. He seemed afraid to learn of the solitude in the desert, and he asked me if any gods or spirits might be found there. I told him it seemed there are none in the wastes. I didn't bother explaining. It's all wastes. And I'll leave a little pause between the sections here to, I've moved on to another muse strike. Caring for a very small god isn't unlike tending a young child. Both are convinced of their omnipotence and immortality, and each at times rails at the world with an impressive wrath and fury. The difference being, the child possesses an anger they can truly inflict upon the world, while my little god relies on my belief to achieve even the slightest destructive end. My little god begged me today to believe in him. I think he's becoming suspicious his immortality is dependent upon my belief and patronage. Did someone tell him of his contingent existence? Has he learned the root cause of his being? How very afraid he must be. I told my little god that we're going to the desert tomorrow. He seemed unsure after I explained the place carefully so as to not offend his growing sense of omniscience. I told him the desert was a place for losing what we cherish and for gaining what we fear. He nodded slowly, muttering something about the need of a temple. I suspect he'll soon be very disappointed. My little god has no sense of his ignorance, which I reckon the greater measure of omniscience. I told my little god about the helpful muse we might meet in the desert tonight and tomorrow. He wasn't at all pleased and complained of my holding another before him. It didn't help that I explained my muse is dead and not even real. Such threats he leveled at me then. Maybe when he meets the nothing himself, he'll realize how little there is to fear. I reached the near edge of the deep desert, and oh my, it's cold. I didn't come prepared for this, and I've still 100 miles to go before I reach Siberia and the safety of my desert camp. The sun's just now gone away, and I know the deeper cold is coming. This is scary, just like the summer heat which has now passed was scary. Only this scary burns in a way that brings on shivers and chattering teeth rather than delirium and fatigue. I'll bundle up now as best I can and turn on my motorcycle's heated hand grips, which are a peripheral comfort. My small god is noticeably absent now. Have I perhaps been forsaken? He's been pestering me for a prayer. Maybe he thinks I'll relent in the wild. I've discovered my little god is afraid of the new horizon which I uncovered this weekend. Such irony that I've been hooked up with a domestic god, a deity of home and hearth, a god more comfortable behind a walled garden or a locked door than amidst the frontiers of creation. My little god wants nothing of the larger world and covers his ears when I speak of the great indifference. It's no wonder he's so jealous of others. His wrath now is no surprise. I wonder how we can reconcile our difference, find peace between his small heaven and the greater universe of reality. I suspect I'll simply need to leave him alone, leave him at home when I go out, let him alone with his certitude and finality, deny and protect him from the vast ignorance and reality which looms like a giant before us both whenever we step foot outside our door. My little god's insistence on immortality is striking given his additional claim to know everything. Shouldn't he understand his immortality cannot possibly survive my death unless I can find another to believe after I am gone? My little god came to me tonight, trembling and asking after eternity. I told him I hadn't a clue and could offer no suggestions along these lines. He went away wide-eyed and perplexed. I'll bet he's going to make something up. A benefit of not believing in ghosts is that ghosts never come to scare me. Likewise, monsters, demons, and poltergeist. They all keep their distance. The supernatural seems to only haunt the willing, the skeptical mind offering seemingly infertile soil for what is not really there. My God is small because he has no ample space to live within my mind. He'd probably be a great God if I'd only believe. He resides on a dusty and neglected mental shelf where I keep my credulity and faith, a place well illuminated with doubt to keep out the vermin. He'd be much happier on a shelf with certitude or belief, though it seems I've only enough to sustain the slightest of gods. I awoke past midnight to walk barefoot through the dark, not far from the tent, just enough distance to unsettle whatever comfort had seeped in from the warmth of my sleeping bag and the safety of my shelter. I so enjoy the feeling of letting go the rope to anything sound and settled, to drift for a distance naked and shivering in the cold, to stand vulnerable beneath a vast and seemingly eternal canopy of stars. That's why I reject my muse, those ghosts and my little god, less for the fact that they aren't real, and more for the desire to do without the false comfort their non-existence could never honestly provide. That's the end of that short chapter. It's an important chapter for me because it's how I deal with and reconcile the wonder against the ample evidence that there are no gods. Or I should say, rather, the lack of any evidence that there are. The silence speaks volumes. Thanks for joining me for this one. I'm going to turn off the camera and go jump in the water. It's pretty big waves. There's a good shore break right there. I can hear the pounding once in a while. Feels good. Feels good to be alive. Lately, just like in the last 2 or 3 weeks, there's kind of a new vitality that's risen. In fact, I've called off the most recent surgery. I don't think I need it. There are risks and complications associated with it. And the pain that I was feeling has gone away. And I wanted to take care of it here in the States rather than try to tackle it in Japan, as long as I had everything set up and I could talk to the doctors clearly. But I think I'm going to let that one pass. I'm going to live with it and continue this trajectory. It's a good feeling. It's a nice moment. It's good time to be alive and to be ready at all times, as best I can, to no longer be alive. Okay. I wish you all the best. Be safe, but not too safe. Oh, I forgot to check if there were any comments. Okay, no comments. Take care. Bye-bye.